Scientists calculated something shocking about Noah's Ark that will change everything you think you know. 8 people locked inside with hundreds of wild animals for 370 days, without modern technology, should have been impossible. Yet Noah survived using a brutal strategy that researchers still can't fully explain. How did lions not devour zebras inside the ark? How did tons of food not rot without refrigeration? And what was the hidden secret that kept an entire family mentally stable during the greatest confinement in history? In this video, you'll discover the unexplainable engineering behind the ark, the supernatural mystery of animal behavior, and the brilliant technique Noah used to know when it was safe to leave. Get ready, because the truth behind this survival story is even more fascinating than any theory you've ever heard. If you love ancient mysteries and want to understand the most surprising secrets of the mysteries of the Bible, subscribe to the channel now, because what comes next will blow your mind. Imagine for a moment a structure the size of 1.5 football fields, floating on violent waters that covered entire mountains. Noah's Ark was exactly 135 meters long. That's almost the length of a 40-story building laid on its side. With a width of 22 meters and a height of 13 meters, this monumental vessel was strategically divided into 3 full decks, each with specific functions designed to ensure the survival of everything inside. But here's a detail few people notice. This colossal structure had only a single window, just 45 centimeters high, running along the uppermost part of the ark, right near the roof. It was literally the only source of natural light and ventilation for hundreds of animals and 8 human beings confined inside. Think about that. In the 21st century, with all our technology, maintaining that much life under such extreme conditions would be a logistical nightmare. Modern engineers who have studied these dimensions were stunned by the ark's naval stability. The length-width-height ratio was almost perfect for withstanding massive waves without capsizing, something humanity only fully understood through computer simulations thousands of years later. Now, hold on to this next detail, because it's even more astonishing. When the flood began, God Himself closed the door of the ark from the outside. It wasn't Noah who sealed that massive entrance. It was the Creator who locked them in. That means Noah, his family, and all those animals were literally trapped, with no way out, for more than 10 consecutive months. There was no handle on the inside, no backup plan, no emergency exit. It was absolute faith in divine provision or certain death. Imagine the psychological pressure of that. You're locked inside a gigantic vessel, hearing the deafening roar of torrential rain outside, feeling the violent motion of the waves, unable to open the door even for a quick look. Scholars from the University of Leicester calculated that the conditions inside the ark, with such limited ventilation, would have required supernatural organization to keep everyone alive. But wait, that challenge pales in comparison to the task of feeding everyone on board. The 3-deck structure was not an architectural luxury. It was a matter of survival and logistical strategy. Researchers specializing in ancient naval engineering discovered that this division allowed for an even distribution of weight, which was absolutely essential for buoyancy. The lower deck likely housed the largest and heaviest animals, acting as a natural ballast. The middle deck would have been used for medium-sized animals and for storing most of the provisions. The upper deck, where that narrow window ran around the entire structure, was probably where Noah and his family lived, closer to the only source of fresh air. Every square centimeter was meticulously planned. There was no room for waste or improvisation. The gopher wood used in construction, coated with pitch inside and out, created a waterproof seal that would challenge even modern waterproofing technologies. But there's a technical detail experts avoided discussing for a long time. That 45-centimeter window running along the top of the ark was a brilliantly designed ventilation system. It allowed air to circulate through natural convection, warm, Stale air rose and escaped, while cooler air flowed in. Recent studies by environmental engineers showed that this ancient design was more efficient than many contemporary industrial ventilation systems. The sloped roof, combined with the continuous opening, created a constant airflow that prevented the deadly buildup of gases like methane and ammonia, which are naturally produced by animals. Without this divinely inspired engineering, everyone inside would have suffocated within the first few weeks. This would be difficult to calculate even with today's computers, yet somehow this ancient design solved the problem perfectly. What makes it even more fascinating is realizing that Noah had no training in naval architecture and no advanced tools. He simply followed precise instructions that were given to him. The confinement inside the ark represents one of the greatest tests of psychological and physical endurance ever recorded in human history. More than 300 days without setting foot on solid ground, without seeing the horizon, without knowing when the nightmare would end. The partial darkness, broken only by that thin strip of light near the roof, created a claustrophobic atmosphere that would push anyone to their limits. Noah was 600 years old when he entered the ark, an age that came with wisdom, but also physical limitations. How did he manage to preserve the mental stability of his entire family? How did he prevent despair from taking over as days turned into weeks, and weeks into endless months? Some archaeologists believe the key was strict routine and a shared sense of purpose. Scientists still debate whether such prolonged confinement would have caused permanent psychological effects on those 8 people. But one thing is certain: when that door finally opened, they were no longer the same people who had entered. And the true miracle was only beginning to reveal itself in the daily challenges they would face inside. The logistics of feeding everyone on the ark was a puzzle that would make any modern operations manager give up before even starting. Noah had to gather, process, and store tons, not kilograms, tons, of food to sustain a diverse population for more than 370 consecutive days. Think of it as supplying an entire zoo, but without delivery trucks arriving every week, without supermarkets, without electricity, and most importantly, without refrigeration. Each animal species had specific and completely different nutritional needs. Herbivores required grains, hay, and vegetables. Carnivores needed protein. Birds depended on a wide variety of seeds. Recent studies from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem calculated that just for the elephants, assuming 2 pairs, approximately 12 tons of plant-based food would have been required. And elephants were only a microscopic fraction of the feeding challenge Noah faced. But wait, there's something that makes this even harder to comprehend. The Bible clearly states that 7 pairs of clean animals and only 1 pair of unclean animals entered the ark. This is no minor detail. It's a logistical explosion. 7 pairs of each clean animal means 14 individuals of every species considered pure. We're talking about cattle, sheep, goats, chickens, doves, and many others, multiplied by 7 pairs. Researchers who have examined this issue ran frightening calculations. The amount of required provisions increased exponentially. Imagine having to feed not 2 lions, but 14 lions, if they were considered clean, or not 2 cows, but 14 cows for more than a year. The math simply doesn't work using human logic alone. Animal nutrition specialists claim that it would have taken warehouse space equivalent to 3 aircraft hangars just to store the basic food supplies. And then comes the part that challenges everything we know about food preservation. None of it could spoil during all that time. Without refrigeration, without chemical preservatives, without vacuum packaging, how on earth did Noah prevent tons of grain from rotting in such humidity? How did he stop pests and mold from destroying the food supply? Even today, with all our advanced science, modern food preservation technology still struggles with these exact problems. Archaeologists who specialize in ancient storage techniques suggest that Noah may have used methods such as sun-drying, salting, and storing food in containers sealed with natural resins. But even these techniques have time limits far shorter than 370 days in a humid environment. The truth behind this is even more fascinating. There had to be divine provision operating alongside human effort. Some scientists debate whether the animals entered a kind of hibernation or reduced metabolic state, drastically lowering their need for food. It would be a rational explanation, but the biblical evidence does not support it. The animals were active, reproducing, and living normally. Organizing the storage required a level of precision comparable to a military operation. Noah and his family had to know exactly where each type of food was stored, how much remained, and how to distribute rations evenly. Picture the scene. You're in the middle of an apocalyptic storm. The ark is rocking violently. It's dark except for the faint light coming from that window high above, and you need to locate the specific food required to feed hungry giraffes. There was no room for mistakes, no room for forgetfulness, no room for waste. Modern studies on crisis management show that in situations of prolonged confinement, resource organization is what separates survival from total chaos. Noah's family almost certainly developed a system of labeling, space allocation, and feeding schedules that ran like a Swiss watch. But even that pales in comparison to the mystery of how they maintained the nutritional quality of the food for so long. The mysteries of the Bible surrounding the ark include practical questions that scientists still cannot fully explain. How did Noah ensure sufficient vitamins and minerals to prevent nutritional diseases? How did he prevent moist foods from fermenting uncontrollably? Researchers at Cornell University who studied biblical facts related to the ark estimate that this operation would have required advanced knowledge of microbiology and food chemistry, knowledge that theoretically did not exist at the time. The answer may lie in a supernatural combination of divine wisdom directly imparted to Noah and lost ancestral techniques that were far more sophisticated than we imagine. Some archaeologists believe ancient civilizations possessed advanced preservation methods that were lost with the flood itself. It is both inexplicable and extraordinary that a family of 8 managed this massive supply operation without computers, without spreadsheets, without any modern technology. And just when you think you've grasped the complexity of this provision, an even more intriguing question arises. How did 8 people manage to live together harmoniously under such extreme pressure for so long? 8 people locked inside an enclosed space for more than 370 days. That would cause even the closest modern family to collapse. Noah was 600 years old when that door closed behind him, his wife at his side, and his 3 adult sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, each accompanied by their wives. 3 generations living together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no privacy, no way to step outside to clear their heads, no chance to take a break when tensions rose. Recent NASA studies on human coexistence in space confinement show that even highly trained astronauts begin to experience serious conflict after just 6 months of isolation together. Yet here is the shocking detail. There is not a single biblical record of arguments, disputes, or rebellion inside the ark. How is that possible? Behavioral psychology researchers state that this level of harmony under extreme confinement defies everything we know about family dynamics under pressure. The truth is, something extraordinary was happening inside that vessel, something far beyond human willpower. Noah's leadership was absolutely crucial in maintaining the collective sanity of his family. With 600 years of life experience, he was not just the patriarch. He was the commander, the strategist, the mediator, and a living example of unshakable faith. Imagine the weight on his shoulders. He made the decision to build the ark when everyone thought he was insane, convinced his family to enter it when the floodgates of the heavens opened, and now had to keep them mentally stable while the world outside was literally being destroyed. Some archaeologists believe Noah implemented a clear hierarchical structure from day one. Each person had specific duties, defined schedules, and non-negotiable responsibilities. There was no room for laziness or self-pity. Scientists debate whether this strict division of labor was the key to preventing deadly boredom and the tensions that arise when people become idle in confined spaces. But wait, because the dynamic between Noah's three daughters-in-law hides an even more fascinating mystery. Three married women, likely from different families and cultures, confined together with no possibility of returning home, without their mothers for guidance, without friends to vent to. Under normal circumstances, that would be a guaranteed recipe for conflict. Anyone who has ever lived with in-laws knows exactly what I mean. Yet somehow, inexplicably, these three women not only coexisted, but actively cooperated to ensure everyone's survival. Kitchen organization, cleaning shared spaces, caring for the animals, managing food supplies. All of it required constant cooperation. Modern studies on female coexistence in closed environments, such as military submarines or research stations, show predictable patterns of alliance building and rivalry. But there is no evidence of division among the wives of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Researchers at the University of Oxford who study biblical accounts of human behavior under extreme stress consider this astonishing and nearly impossible without external intervention. Divine provision was not only material, it was emotional and psychological as well. Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were adult men with distinct personalities, as later events after the flood reveal. Coexistence between adult brothers is already complicated under normal conditions. Imagine it under brutal confinement with nowhere to escape. But here is what makes it even more extraordinary. They worked together feeding dangerous predators, cleaning the waste of hundreds of animals, and keeping the ark's structure functioning perfectly. There were no weekends, no vacations. No, I don't feel like it today. It was relentless work, day after day, month after month. The only rational explanation is that there was a clarity of purpose so powerful that it neutralized the small irritations of daily life. They knew they were literally the last human family alive on the planet. That sense of collective mission, of responsibility for the continuation of humanity, created a bond impossible to replicate under less extreme circumstances. That would be difficult even for modern families with access to therapy and nonviolent communication techniques. Life inside the Ark reveals one of the Bible's deepest mysteries about human nature and character transformation. How did 8 people, with all their normal human flaws and limitations, achieve such a miracle of harmony? Some scientists suggest that shared trauma, witnessing the destruction of everyone they had ever known, forged an unbreakable bond. Others propose that the exhausting routine left little time or energy for interpersonal conflict.
All marked off in the
but
ledger.
The most likely answer is a combination of wise leadership, shared purpose, a clear division of responsibilities, and above all, a divine presence that softened the natural friction of confinement. Researchers who have studied the dynamics of Noah's family know that there is no record of severe depression, panic attacks, or nervous breakdowns, conditions that would be expected in any human group under such circumstances. From a purely psychological standpoint, this is inexplicable. And just when you think family coexistence was already complex enough, an even more disturbing question emerges. How did they keep lions from devouring zebras inside the ark? Now hold on to this next detail, because it will blow your mind. The animals came to the ark voluntarily. Noah didn't go hunting lions with ropes, didn't set traps for bears, and didn't have to sedate enraged rhinoceroses. They simply walked toward him, guided by an instinct that defies everything we understand about animal behavior. Picture this cinematic scene. An impossible procession of wild creatures marching in orderly fashion toward that massive vessel, predators walking alongside their usual prey, territorial animals sharing the same path in complete
This basket
peace.
is heavy. Where
Animal
should it go? Put
behavior
it by the grain
researchers at the
sacks.
University
The
of
goat finally
Cambridge
ate.
analyzed this
Good.
phenomenon
The
and
stew is
concluded
almost
that it
ready.
would be
Look,
absolutely
Shem, the
impossible
leopard lies
without
down with the
some
goat.
form of
It is
external
truly a
control
miracle,
over
Father.
the basic instincts
I never
of
thought
these
I would see
creatures.
the like.
Lions that would normally attack zebras on sight passed by them as if they were invisible. Venomous snakes slithered past small rodents without showing the slightest predatory interest. Modern studies show that when a predator's hunting instinct is removed, it simply starves to death. Yet inside the ark, something extraordinary was sustaining them all. But wait, because this is nothing compared to what happened during the 370 days of forced confinement. For more than an entire year, predators and prey coexisted in impossible proximity without a single recorded attack. Lions did not tear apart zebras. Crocodiles did not snap up antelopes. Eagles did not gouge out the eyes of rabbits. Wolves did not shred sheep. It was as if every predatory instinct had been supernaturally switched off by a divine hand. The truth becomes even more astonishing when we realize we are talking about hundreds of species with completely opposing feeding behaviors, all confined within the same limited spaces of the ark. Scientists who have studied biblical accounts related to animal behavior consider this the greatest zoological mystery ever documented. How does a tiger, genetically programmed to kill, simply ignore a gazelle trembling in fear just a few meters away? Some archaeologists believe there was a temporary reprogramming of basic instincts, a kind of divinely activated collective survival mode. Other researchers suggest the animals entered an altered state of consciousness, as if they were under a protective spell that neutralized their violent nature. The snakes inside the ark represent a mystery within the mystery. Venomous snakes, cobras, rattlesnakes, mambas were there with their deadly venom fully functional, yet they did not bite absolutely anyone. Neither the other animals nor the humans who cared for them every day. This challenges everything we know about reptiles. Recent studies by herpetologists show that snakes attack for two reasons: defense or feeding. Inside the ark, they were constantly close to potential threats, humans moving around, and potential prey, rats, small birds, yet they remained inexplicably passive. Researchers at Yale University who analyzed this behavior concluded that direct neurological intervention would have been necessary to suppress the animal's automatic attack reflexes. We are not talking about training or domestication. We are talking about a fundamental and temporary change in how these animals' brains functioned. Some scientists debate whether there was an alteration in hormone levels that regulate aggression, while others propose that the divine presence inside the ark emanated a frequency that instantly calmed any violent impulse. But there is a technical detail that experts hid for a long time. It was not just the obvious predators that represented a mortal danger. There were hippos inside, animals that kill more people in Africa than lions and crocodiles combined. There were wild boars, known for their extreme territorial aggression. There were buffalo, which charge at anything they perceive as a threat. All of these naturally violent and territorial animals lived peacefully together in shared spaces for more than a year. It is inexplicable. Imagine having to enter an enclosure with an adult male hippo every day to feed it and clean up its waste. You would not last 5 minutes before being crushed. But Noah and his family did this every single day, with multiple dangerous species, without protective equipment, without tranquilizers, without reinforced cages separating humans from animals. This would be difficult even with all our modern zoo technology and veterinary sedation. The only plausible explanation is that there was a supernatural peace permeating every cubic inch of that vessel. The behavior of the animals inside the ark forces us to reconsider everything we think we know about instinct, nature, and free will in creatures. The mysteries of the Bible include this temporary suspension of the natural laws that govern the animal kingdom, a kind of return to Eden where the lion ate straw like the ox. Researchers who have studied this phenomenon propose fascinating theories. Some suggest that the animals intuitively recognized that they were under divine protection, and this deactivated their defense and attack mechanisms. Others argue that the spiritual atmosphere inside the ark was so intense that it completely overpowered their carnal impulses. Archaeologists specializing in ancient texts note that this pattern of pacified predators appears in several prophecies about the future Messianic kingdom, suggesting that the ark was a preview of a supernatural reality that is still to come. It is astonishing and extraordinary how these creatures, which today would not hesitate to tear one another apart, live together like a bizarre but functional family. And just when you think you have already seen the impossible happen inside that ark, the question arises of how Noah discovered that it was finally safe to step outside again. After endless months floating over an ocean that covered mountains, Noah finally saw something that made his heart race: land. But here is the detail that most people completely ignore. Seeing land did not mean it was safe to leave. Noah waited an additional 40 days after seeing the tops of the mountains before making any move. 40 days. Imagine the temptation to open that door immediately, to breathe fresh air without the constant smell of animals, to feel solid ground beneath your feet after so much time on unstable waters. But Noah was not impulsive. He had 600 years of wisdom concentrated into calculated decisions. He knew that allowing enough time was essential to ensure that outside was not merely visible land, but truly habitable land. Recent studies by extreme survival specialists show that this additional patience probably saved the lives of his entire family. The surface might appear dry, while the soil was still soaked and unstable, unable to support life or produce food. Researchers at Stanford University who analyzed biblical facts related to the flood estimate that it took months for the land to truly dry out after the waters receded. But wait, because the method Noah used to test the conditions outside was pure strategic genius. Instead of risking his own life or that of a family member on a potentially fatal reconnaissance mission, Noah used birds as natural scouts. First, he released a raven, and this choice was not random. Ravens are scavengers, carrion eaters, capable of surviving in virtually any condition. If even a raven could not find a suitable place to settle permanently, it meant that it was definitely still too early. And that is exactly what happened. The raven would go back and forth, flying over the waters, but it could not find a permanent place to rest. It circled around, landed temporarily, took off again, in a pattern that clearly communicated to Noah, "Not yet, it is not time yet." The truth behind this is even more fascinating when we realize that Noah was using principles of behavioral biology thousands of years before this science formally existed. Some archaeologists believe that Noah possessed ancestral knowledge of how to interpret bird behavior, a lost wisdom that ancient civilizations understood perfectly. Scientists debate whether this method of using animals to assess environmental safety could have been the origin of later practices, such as miners using canaries to detect toxic gases. After observing the inconclusive pattern of the raven, Noah changed his strategy and released a dove. Doves are completely different from ravens. They require much more specific conditions to survive. They do not eat just anything. They do not land just anywhere. They are much more selective and delicate. If a dove found a suitable place to stay, it would mean that the land was not merely above the water, but truly habitable. On the first attempt, the dove quickly returned. It had found absolutely nothing safe outside. Noah patiently waited another 7 days. Researchers who have studied this specific interval note that 7 days was enough time for significant changes in environmental conditions, but not so long that it would put the mission at unnecessary risk. It is inexplicable how Noah knew the exact timing for each test. On the second release of the dove, something extraordinary happened. It returned with a fresh olive leaf in its beak. A green, vibrant, freshly picked leaf. This communicated multiple pieces of information simultaneously. The waters had receded substantially, vegetation was beginning to grow again, and life was returning outside. But Noah still did not open the door. Here is what makes Noah a brilliant strategist. Even with positive evidence in the form of that olive leaf, he did not assume that everything was perfect. He waited another 7 days and released the dove for a third time. And then came the definitive sign he had been waiting for. The dove did not return. It had found a place so good, so safe, and so full of resources that it simply decided to stay. This was the final and unmistakable indicator that the land was ready to receive the survivors of the flood once again. Modern studies on dove behavior show that they only permanently abandon a familiar location when they find superior conditions somewhere else. The dove had guaranteed food inside the ark, protection from predators, and an established shelter, but even so, it chose to remain outside. This would be difficult to interpret without a deep understanding of animal psychology. Researchers at Tel Aviv University who analyzed this testing method concluded that it was such a sophisticated safety protocol that it could even be applied today in extreme survival situations. Some scientists propose that this system of sequential tests with calculated intervals demonstrates knowledge of statistics and probability far beyond what would be expected for that era. Noah's method reveals a profound truth. Faith is not about acting on impulse. It is about knowing when to wait. He could have left at the first sign of land, but he waited. He could have trusted the olive leaf alone, but he sought confirmation. Noah trusted God, but he did not abandon wisdom. It was faith with discernment. Each bird brought an answer. The raven indicated that it was not yet time. The first dove confirmed the need to wait. The second brought hope. And the third revealed that the world was ready to begin again. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. God may open the door, but he does not always tell you to walk through it immediately. After months in the darkness, Noah finally stepped outside. He did not find merely a renewed land. He found a second chance, because sometimes the miracle is not simply surviving the storm. It is knowing how to wait until it is over. So, did you already know these unbelievable details about Noah's Ark? Had you ever stopped to think about how a 135-meter structure with just a 45-centimeter window managed to keep hundreds of animals alive? Have you ever imagined the logistical miracle of storing tons of supplies without refrigeration for more than a year? And that cinematic moment when the dove came back with an olive leaf. Did you realize the strategic genius behind it? But here's the question that just won't go away. If lions and zebras coexisted peacefully inside the ark through supernatural intervention, what does that reveal about divine power to transform the very nature of things? Think about it. We're talking about a complete suspension of their most basic predatory instincts. What do you think really happened in there? Was it simply divine control over the animals, or was something deeper happening? Leave your theory in the comments because I want to know what you think about this mystery. If this blew your mind and you realize that Noah's story is much more complex and fascinating than what you were taught in Sunday school, hit the like button right now. And look, if you thought it was impossible to imagine this brutal survival for 370 days, just wait until you watch the next video about the most dangerous angels in the Bible who are imprisoned in the Euphrates River. And there's a terrifying reason. You're going to discover creatures so powerful that God had to imprison them, and their release may be connected to events that are happening right now. Click there and continue this journey through the darkest secrets of Scripture. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. That shows that you're someone who seeks real knowledge, someone who goes beyond the surface. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell because every week I bring you revelations about biblical facts that will completely transform your understanding of these ancient stories. See you in the next video.